3 trades that could propel the Bruins right back into contention. And a warning, this is going to get a little crazy. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Like and subscribe. Follow the channel along as we are on the path towards 4,000 subscribers. That number has skyrocketed over the last few weeks, but only about 5% of you watching are actually subscribed. So let's get those numbers up. Trade number 1, Casey Mittelstadt, a 2026 second-round pick, a 2027 second-round pick to the Calgary Flames for Rasmus Andersson. Seems like it's not a good enough haul, but hear me out. Rasmus Andersson wants out of Calgary bad, and he's going to be a UFA next year, going into a contract year, and all he has said so far is that he only wants to sign long-term with the Vegas Golden Knights. Good luck with that. Okay, Vegas just went out and got Mitch Marner in a huge deal, and they signed him for 12 by 8. No state income tax. It's pretty good, huh? Just like Rantanen in Dallas, same deal. And Vegas has no money. Vegas has no money to go out and get Rasmus Andersson right now. I know they can work miracles. They can probably get him in a year when they clear Jack Eichel off the books and he goes to free agency. But right now, Vegas has no money to sign Rasmus Andersson. So that's why the Bruins can possibly get away with a steal in return for Andersson. I know he hasn't had a great couple of last 2 years or so here since Daryl Sutter left. It's not been the same Rasmus Andersson that we saw, kind of a shutdown defenseman who obviously wears a letter for Calgary. But that's why I think you can get rid of someone like Casey Mittelstadt. I don't know what they've issued a qualifying offer to Morgan Frost out there in Calgary, but could probably use a middle 6, bottom 6 kind of center. They have a ton of cap space this year, so they can take on a contract like Mittelstadt and maybe flip him at the deadline, much like what Colorado did to the Bruins this past year for Mittelstadt. Andersson sits at $4.55 million on a cap hit for 1 more year. And if you're the Bruins getting him now, you're probably looking at a 1-year deal. This is a way to get off a bad contract. And maybe, just maybe, he really likes it here. He likes teaming up with Nikita Zadorov again, and he does stick around long-term, and then you've got him at a steal. It fits your right-hand defenseman needs, and if he doesn't want to stick around, it could be a great flip at the trade deadline. So as crazy as it sounds, Rasmus Andersson is not going to get the contract in Vegas that he wants. He's not going to get the trade to Vegas that he wants. So the Bruins could possibly fleece the Flames a little bit here, get someone who can help their lineup, maybe take a chance on getting him long-term. And if not, he'll be one hell of a trade chip at the deadline come March. And that is where Don Sweeney does his best work. So trade number 1, Casey Mittelstadt, a 26 and a 27 second-round pick. It's 2 premium picks. Like when you're thinking about it, that is a bit of a risk for defenseman Rasmus Andersson. Trade number 2. Let's look at the Stanley Cup champs for this one, shall we? Florida has worked their magic. Okay, they brought everybody back. Ekblad, Bennett, Marchand, all locked up. Bill Zito has done it again. But now they've got about $43 left in cap space, and they need to move a few of their contracts. The Bruins need some depth pieces. So trade number 2 for the Bruins' perfect offseason. Jonas Korpisalo and a 2026 third-round pick for Evan Rodrigues. I love Evan Rodrigues, man. It's not just because he went to BU and led the nation in scoring back in 2015 when they went to the national championship game. I think Evan Rodrigues is one of the best depth pieces in the entire NHL. I think he's one of the most underrated depth pieces in the entire NHL. And he didn't have the greatest 2025 postseason, but in 2024, he was the leading scorer in the Stanley Cup final. Evan Rodrigues, like that's a pretty huge deal. And he's still a guy who can give you 20-plus goals every year, can play a little bit of the penalty kill. He could do a lot of different things for you, and he would slot in as a winger on your second line right away. I'm not saying he gives you all the things that this guy does, but in essence, that can be your Brad Marchand replacement. Being second line, winger, played just not as much special teams, obviously, as Marchand would. Doesn't have the skill as much as Marchand, but he is a 20-goal guy, can certainly bring some production there. For Florida, that's just a way to kind of clear off some cap room. They also do have Vitek Vanacek, their backup goalie, as a UFA. So Jonas Korpisalo can fit right in there at the same cap hit as Evan Rodrigues and fill a need they have. They can also flip him before the start of the regular season. You could also see Andrew Peeke in there instead of Jonas Korpisalo. I think the Bruins are much more willing to move off the Korpisalo contract than they are Andrew Peeke, with the aforementioned really thin depth that they have at right shot defenseman. And I think they really like Andrew Peeke. His cap hit only at $2.75 million rather than the $3 million that that Jonas Korpisalo is at. And so that leaves just a little bit of room for the Panthers to do maybe something else. But this is someone that the Panthers are probably going to move off of. They have put out there that they need to clear some cap space. That's pretty obvious after the Marchand, Ekblad, and Sam Bennett deals. So they need to clear some cap space here. It's a guy who can give you 40 points in a season, 35 to 40 points. And right now that's better than most of what the Bruins have when it comes to that offensive strategy. So Evan Rodrigues could be a tremendous depth piece for them. He's not going to have the same kind of impact that he would for a really good team like in Florida. That kind of goes without saying when you go from a team as good as, the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions to the team that finished in 15th place in the Eastern Conference. But it's one that allows you to get some depth in there, get some points on your NHL roster this year, and trade someone who's not going to give you points, whether it's Jonas Korpisalo or Andrew Peeke. I know those are, two different things. Andrew Peeke does give you more than that, but it's a contract, especially in Korpisalo, that you'd probably really want to move out of. So Bruins do not have a lot of wiggle room when it comes to free agency and the cap space. I don't think they're going to get into a bidding war with Brock Besser at this point, although if you can get him somehow at $7.5 or $8 million with how thin this market is, I'll take that. But your best bet is to probably get some depth pieces cheap who are probably on expiring contracts and go for it again next year. I don't think that's a bad thing for the Bruins to do. I don't think that's an FU to the fan base. Evan Rodrigues, bringing a BU kid who's won a couple of Stanley Cups, can give you a little something on the second line, and you give up almost nothing. Trade number 3 is certainly the biggest on this list by far. Rasmus Andersson, great player, probably only would be here for 1 year. Evan Rodrigues, pure depth guy. Trade number 3 of the Bruins offseason could legitimately make them a playoff team after finishing 15th in the Eastern Conference in 2024-25. We've heard this guy's name being thrown out in trade rumors this whole offseason. He definitely fits what is still a huge Bruins need and would be the only one that I would get really drastic for in this offseason, looking at what the UFA class is going to be in 2026, because this guy would demand a contract extension, and I think he might be worth it. Trade number 3, a doozy. Hampus Lindholm, Pavel Zacha, and the 2026 first-round pick you got from Toronto in the Brandon Carlo trade for Marco Rossi. Marco Rossi is one of the few bona fide, top 6 centers that are actually out there for the Bruins to potentially get. Marco Rossi is a 23-year-old top-line center for a playoff team that is getting better each year. If you can make a deal like this happen, that is one where you are taking a bit of a risk in terms of what you are sending back, but you are getting a young player who will sign an extension, a young first-line center who has played with some truly good talent and has been in playoff series before. Okay, he doesn't go past the first round because he plays for Minnesota, but he has been in those battles before. He has not missed a game in either of the last 2 seasons. He went from 40 points in 23-24 to 60 points in 24-25. If you're talking about a trade market, this guy would be right at the very top in terms of value, even if you extend him for something like $7 to $8 million a year. I think that would be a terrific move for the Boston Bruins. It would put you right up against the cap this year, just like you did last year, but it would be one hell of an acquisition for your future not just this year. And when you look at Minnesota's side of things, I don't know that they necessarily need Hampus Lindholm, but he's someone who, when you're on a win now team like Minnesota with a ton of cap room, about $19 million in cap room, you can go out and get him at a really friendly contract in this new salary cap era, which is $6.5 million per year. He is still in line for another, I want to say 3 or 4 years for the Bruins. So he's still got some term left on that contract. And you know what? It's 5 years for $6.5 million. And if you don't love him, again, that's a nice contract for a contender that you could trade to at the trade deadline, maybe send him back to the Eastern Conference, or he could be one of the best second or third pair value contracts for a defenseman in the entire NHL. Pavel Zacha, I don't really get this one, but Minnesota has apparently expressed some interest in Pavel Zacha as a pretty versatile player. Like, I think he had a bit of a disappointing year, but let's be honest with him. He is a pretty decent penalty killer, and he can play on the wing and at center in pretty much the same capacity. Okay, so Minnesota can use a relatively cheap guy, $4.75 million on the cap hit for a team with plenty of room, 2 years left on him. And you can play him up and down the lineup, couple of different positions, and you replace a guy who's pretty disgruntled in Marco Rossi. You get a first-round pick. Obviously, the Bruins are not going to move off their own first-round pick for 2026. It's going to be tough for any team to do that feels like they're even close to possibly being bad, because there's the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes out there, and the Islanders were supposed to pick 10th in this draft and picked number 1. So it's going to be a market for not a lot of teams wanting to move off their own first-round pick. The beauty of it for the Bruins is they have somebody else's first-round pick. Toronto, which is not going to be great, but if you're Minnesota, that means you'll probably have 2 picks between about 15 and 22, 2 teams that go out early in the playoffs quite a lot. You can get certainly some value for that, and 2 guys who can help out your lineup right now, and if not, can give you some flexibility in the trade market. But it might seem like it's not quite good enough, but Marco Rossi doesn't really want to be there anymore. He has turned down their extension offer already, which apparently was somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million a year. The Bruins can go up to 8 or 9 and still have some room next year in what is a pretty good UFA class. So when you look at a team that needs to make trades and not go after this free agent class in 2025, the Bruins are certainly at the top of that list. Again, looking at the cap space, they've got a couple of guys they not just want to move off, but kind of need to move off. Like, I wish you could move off Elias Lindholm. We'd love that. But if you look at the rest of these guys, man, they're pretty replaceable outside of that first line. Zacha, Middlestat, those are 2 pretty big cap hits for the production that they're giving you right now. Hampus Lindholm, I keep mentioning his name. He's someone I would like to keep. I do like Hampus Lindholm, but I just think that contract is going to be really sexy for a contending team that needs a left shot defenseman. I think you can get a lot for him especially, of course, if he comes back healthy this year and looks like the Hampus Lindholm he was to start last season, and if he's near the Hampus Lindholm you got in the 2022-23 season. I don't like the Jokiharju contract they just signed him to yesterday. I just don't know why he's worth 3x3. I know that's not huge money, but I don't see it. Andrew Peeke, third pairing defenseman at just under $3 million a year at a cap hit. Nice little player. Wouldn't mind moving off him if you can, and you can get something for him, and maybe that helps you out next summer, and we don't see it necessarily this year. And Jonas Korpisalo, no-brainer. Move off that contract. You weren't even playing him last year. 3x3 million is probably more than you need for a backup goalie. So those 3 trades can propel the Bruins into playoff contention right now. And I think Marco Rossi makes the most sense. To me, Rossi is the one that you would actually throw out some real assets for. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're bringing you nothing but Boston sports content and plenty of Bruins talk every weekday, high noon Eastern time, and then wherever you find your podcasts as well. We just dropped a video this morning about Zdeno Chara going into the Hockey Hall of Fame and how he cleaned up Joe Thornton's mess to get there. So check that out on the YouTube channel. All these go out on YouTube as well. So check out the other videos on the channel, talking Bruins and everything else in Boston sports. I'm your host, Cam Stewart. Zach Burke keeps us on the air 5 days a week.